everyone. I'm Rachael Nemeth, CEO and co-founder of Opus Training. Very excited to introduce today's guest, someone I've been lucky enough to get to know over the past few years, Julian Barnes. Julian is the co-founder and CEO of BFS Network, which is a growth accelerator and intelligence platform for boutique fitness, wellness, and self-care businesses. So he's been advising these studio owners and operators for over 20 years. And what makes his perspective unique is that he's not inside one business looking out. He's actually across thousands of businesses simultaneously through peer networks, coaching, the annual BFS State of the Industry report. It's really kind of the only independently produced data report for the boutique fitness industry. So he has this wide perspective. And something that Julian and I really agree on is that there are really obvious parallels between what happened in the restaurant industry over the past few decades and what's happening in fitness right now. So we're going to talk about that today. You know, he has spent so much time watching what separates studios that figure out that fitness is a lifestyle. It is not just a special occasion. So Julian, we're very excited to have you and welcome to Back to Basics.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm happy to be here. Happy to have this conversation. We're going to have a lot of fun. We get to bring the private conversations you and I have to the public.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, maybe let's start. Let's give everyone just a baseline here. So tell me about yourself. Tell everyone about BFS Network.
So you summarized me pretty accurately there. I'm based in New York City, like you, native New Yorker. I work with beauty, fitness, and self-care brands, the founders of the brick and mortar versions of these brands. So we're not working with product companies launching like new sunscreens. We're working with service providers. Think the whole range of personal care services that you probably use. So your fitness provider, your hair, your nails, your waxing, facials, anyone touching your body or advising you how to make your body look better, feel better in a brick and mortar space. That's who we work with. We've been doing this for close to a decade. My business partner is NT. As you said, we have a global view of what the keys or what the path to profitability is for these companies. So looking forward to having this conversation with you today.
Well, and so you and I have talked about the similarities in trends across hospitality and health and fitness. The reality is that like dining out used to be a special occasion and now it's just part of daily life. Fitness feels like it's having kind of the same moment. It's moving from something for health buffs to something that's kind of woven into everyday life. What do you think is actually driving that shift right now?
Pandemic, hands down, it's the number one differentiator in the last 15, 20 years. I mean, let's start with the modern fitness industry. Was started in 1950. So it's only 75 years old. So we have to remember that most people aren't aware of that. So it's a very young industry. But the pandemic focused people's attention inward on their health. We all learned terms that most of us had never heard of before, like core morbidities. And we learned that the people who were at greatest risk for death from COVID were people who were suffering from a prior core morbidity. That along with the fact that a lot of people were home for a period of months, gave people the chance to realize, oh, maybe I should be doing something about my health. And that triggered several things. It triggered the shift to focusing on health span versus lifespan. Health span is how you feel today. Lifespan is how long you live. People recognize that lifespan in a wheelchair or being infirm isn't really life. You're alive, but you're not living. Health span is how you feel today. So COVID, the pandemic, and then I don't think this is coordinated, but certainly there's been a rise of, let's call them the super influencers in the fitness podcast space, but the podcasting especially. So the names that many of your listeners have heard of, from Huberman and Hyman, all doctors, Dr. Huberman, Dr. Hyman, Dr. Stacy Sims, Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, Dr. Bill Campbell, Dr. Rhonda Fitzpatrick, and like hundreds of others have taken to the waves, the airwaves, the podcast waves in the last 5 years. And they've done a really great job in educating the consumer. Certainly, I'm not saying that everything that they all say is 100% accurate, but generally, they've done the hard work of educating people on various aspects of health. And so now the average person, instead of asking their doctor, you know, what is HRV, they're walking into their doctor and they're saying, my HRV is low, right? That's a big difference. We only get 15 minutes with our doctor. Let's use the 15 minutes to ask more specific questions, because I've learned from the podcasters and then YouTube and now AI, there's just a much greater access to information about how to live a healthier life. And all of that is really in the last 5 years.
Well, so where do you think that we're at in this transition then?
We're still early because I'll give you an example. It's so easy to live in a bubble, right? And so I admit it, I live in a bubble of people who are health conscious. A couple of weeks ago, I went to an alumni event at a bar in New York City. If you read all the industry trades, no one's drinking anymore. None of the Gen Zers are drinking anymore. Like all the social wellness clubs, if you're to believe the industry trades. But I walked into this regular bar, like a typical Irish dive bar, 6 o'clock on a Thursday, and it was like, you know, 25 years ago. Nothing had changed. Young men, young women, standing, drinking beer, talking after work, right? So it's really easy to think that no one under 30 drinks anymore, because there's a really small sliver of people who are now going to bathhouse and other shit. But that one bar, that one night a couple weeks ago was a reminder, yeah, we can't drink our own Kool-Aid. So we're still very much in the first or second inning, because only 20 to 25% of Americans have a gym membership. And even those who have a gym membership aren't using it as consistently as we all should, right? So there's a big gap between, I like to think of it as general population and fitness enthusiasts. The fitness enthusiasts have a huge fervor around tracking and whoops and wearable lifespan and optimization. But the fitness enthusiasts, out of that 25% in the gym memberships, I don't know what the number is, but it's a tiny percent. So that's 75% of Americans without a gym membership. And then let's just estimate 80% of the 25% who just have a gym membership and they're not really hardcore fitness enthusiasts. So we have a long way to go, which is why this industry is growing, and it has so much long-term growth potential, because, to use the venture capital or the PE term, the TAM is still massive,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
growing, massive and growing.
Well, so let's kind of zoom in a little bit. You have advised thousands of studios at the same time. And so you're seeing all of these patterns. Like, what do you see that these operators maybe can't see about themselves? What patterns are you seeing today?
They all think they're special. They all think their business is different, but we're different. Sound familiar? You're laughing because you've
Sounds
heard
like
the same.
restaurants.
Right. No, we're different. You know, we're a fusion Asian, Cuban, Latino restaurant. We're not like a steakhouse. Do you serve food? Do your clients come here to eat? Do you have to hire from the same pool of people? You're subject to the same laws, the same overtime laws. It's, you know, so everyone thinks that they're special. And, and I don't mean that they're not, but they're not distinct. Their business challenges aren't distinct. And that's one of the benefits of our state of the industry report, when they can see, oh, okay, my challenges are similar to others, right? Two things that we do that give me the confidence in saying most of these businesses have the same challenges. One are the peer network roundtables that we've been leading for 6 years. So we've been hearing these conversations among the fitness studio owners, and through the power of AI, we were able to create a summary of all of the conversations I had last year with any studio owner, either one-on-one or in a group context. And it's the same 5 recurring issues. And most of those 5 can be summarized as people ops and strategy, right? It's the same issue. Now the issues may change based on the stage of business you're in, but we work with businesses that are multi-location, multi-million in revenue, and they're focused on growing and scaling. So their issues are all the same. Do I have the right people? Are they in the right seats? Do I have the right people to support my expansion strategy? What is my expansion strategy? How am I going to fund my expansion strategy? Those issues are the same. Whether you're Pilates in New York City, strength in Iowa, indoor cycling in Charleston, if you're in a growth mode, your issues are people and systems. Do I have the right people and the right systems to support the growth of my business? And we can see that because we have these cohorts and we have the data from our state of the industry. But understandably, if you're knee deep in running a business every day and you're just focused on your team and your clients, you don't have access to a broader perspective to realize that someone else has the same challenge you have. And that's why when they join our peer network, they realize, oh, here are 9 other people who have similar, if not the same issues, and that provides some level of support. At a minimum, it's misery loves company and I'm not alone. Right?
Sure.
That's the minimum for them to realize they're not alone.
Well, and that's why I think the State of the Industry report is so interesting. I want to talk about that a little bit. So, this is a report that, you're tracking leads, visits, conversion, churn, all of these things, lifetime value. But there's really no data on how studios are training and developing their people. Why is that the one thing that's not being measured today?
I mentioned earlier, my business partner is NTE Tuck, and he has a separate company called Fifth Grade. And he would say that that's exactly what Fifth Grade is tracking, the instructor quality. And so I know at the end of the day, end of today, you're gonna ask me who else should you talk to. There you go. Talk to NTE about how Fifth Grade helps fitness studios measure and track the performance of their instructors at a very high level. I'm going to butcher this. Every time you take a class at a studio that uses Fifth Grade software, you will receive an email from the instructor asking you, well, 2 emails. One, thanks for coming to class today. Great to see you. I'll see you, next time. You get another email that's from the studio saying, how was the class? How was Rachel's class? So it's like an NPS score for
Sure.
individual instructors, right? So he is doing that. But I think your broader question is, it's not being done at scale yet. And that's what Fifth Grade is doing. Within the state of the industry report, we ask questions about team. We ask compensation. We ask size of team. We ask the role. Even starting with the owner, we ask how many hours a week does the owner teach? There's a really strong, well, depending on the market, in big cities and with more locations, there's an inverse relationship. The fewer hours that the owner teaches, the higher the profit. So, and certainly top line revenue, right? When you are not teaching a lot, there is a greater probability of you achieving higher top line revenue. That means if you're not teaching, you're actually running and growing the business. If you're in the classroom or, if you're the chef and you're making every decision, then you're not focusing on running and growing the business. So we have that kind of information in the report. One of the key takeaways from our report last year was the fact that a fitness studio that invests in a dedicated manager, and I'm using that word very intentionally. Dedicated doesn't have to mean full time, but it means his or her primary responsibility is sales, marketing, operations. When a fitness studio invested in a dedicated manager, their top line revenue was higher and their profit margin was higher. And notice I use the word invest when they invest in that person, right? So it was unexpected because I wasn't looking for it, but it makes a whole lot of sense, right? So
Well, so then I'm curious, like whether the dedicated manager effect is really like a people insight or if it's more of a stage of business signal. Like, do the best operators win because they hired that role or were they already at the point where they could support it? You know what I
Well,
mean?
it's mindset, right? It's mindset and confidence and willingness to invest in the future, even when you can't afford it, right? So it's easy to say I can't afford to hire a manager, and so you don't. And you're probably right. You probably can't afford it. But guess what? If you don't hire a manager, the odds of you growing your business to the point where you can afford to hire a manager, those odds are pretty slim.
Mm,
And that's why we go back to mindset. If you recognize, okay, I need to invest in a manager because this person is going to run the business. They're going to find new leads. They're going to enroll those leads. They're going to manage operations and deliver the high level experience that results in retention. I'm going to invest in that person. And I know I can't afford it now, but in 3 to 6 months, that person's going to pay for themselves. And then I can focus on strategy and growth and high level BD, BizDev, right? So it's a mindset. I understand when the operator says I can't afford it, and yet you're kind of in a no in a lose-lose situation, because if you don't find a way, depending on the size of your business, but if you don't find a way to invest in a manager, you're going to be trapped in a vicious cycle where you are teaching 20, 30 hours a week, and you can have a nice living that way, but you're not
lifestyle
going to.
business.
With
Yeah.
a lifestyle business, it's hard, right? Teaching 20, 30 hours a week. And here's the other key takeaway from that finding. When you can have a nice profit if you are the primary instructor or coach in your business. But pretty consistently across the board, there's a ceiling on your top line revenue, because when you're the coach, trainer, instructor, then you're trading your time for dollars, and you're putting a value of, $20 a class to 200 for private session, and there's a finite number of hours. You can't teach every hour, 168 hours of a week. So yes, you can have a lifestyle business, you can have control, and you can enjoy what you do, and there will most likely be a ceiling to your maximum revenue. And that may be fine with you, but you should understand that.
Well, then if people, I mean, like this brings me back kind of to the original question. Like if people and ops are the main bottlenecks to growth, then
Yep.
where do you
It's
actually see,
systems. You say
yeah,
ops.
and systems.
Systems,
Yeah,
right?
ops. Where do you see learning and development having the biggest payoff? Is it manager training? Is it instructor coaching? Is it just front desk sales training? You know?
How about all of the above, plus I would say the two most important things you didn't even mention in there, which are the recruiting and the onboarding.
Mm, yeah.
Like that sets the tone. The recruiting, the job description. Like, I can't tell you how many job descriptions I've read that are generic. Job descriptions are like a resume. You've heard the adage: if you can cover up your name in a resume and read the resume, if it sounds like it could be anyone in the world, then it's not really specific. My resume should look like I'm the only one in the world who could have written that resume,
Hmm.
right?
Speaking of, so you have a law degree. You also have a background in competitive tennis, and you spent your career really building communities rather than companies, which is sort of like the opposite of what you would expect. So, I mean, how does your background show up in how
You make
you
it sound sexy, as if I planned this. I didn't plan any of this, Rachel. That's
well,
because
we
that's
never
a lot of
do.
fun. Right.
But it's still showing up today in who you are and how you lead, but in what ways? Like what are you sort of carrying forward with the skills
Well,
that
look, it all starts with, what's your personal mission? What are you trying to do on Earth? And my purpose is to help people live healthier lives. More specifically, help them live a life that is pain free and pill free for as long as possible. And so that's my purpose. And then I have to figure out, well, what's the best way for me to achieve my purpose? And I've chosen not to be in the front lines. There are people who are much better equipped at being in the front lines than I am. when I say front lines, working with the end consumer. That's not how I've chosen to achieve my goal. Rather, I realize that there are tens of thousands, probably if not hundreds of thousands, of people who are much better than I am working with the consumer, and we want those people to deliver impact at their business to their clients, and they can't deliver impact if they can't stay in business. So the path I've chosen for myself to achieve my life mission is to support those people who are on the front line so that they can stay in business long enough to work with their clients and deliver impact. In other words, the business owners need to build sustainable businesses. Keyword, sustainable businesses. So that's how I've taken my lifelong interest in business, my lifelong interest in movement and fitness and education and entrepreneurship, and they all come together in what we're currently doing at BFS, supporting business owners, giving them access to information, resources, training, so they can build profitable, sustainable businesses, so they can stay in business and deliver their programming and their services to their clients. I'll give you an example. In New York City, Chelsea Piers Fitness, the original location, will celebrate 31 years this summer. They have members who've been there for 31 years,
Yeah.
right? Which means you can't have a 31-year member unless you're in business for 31 years, right? My parents belong to a gym in Westchester County, and they celebrated 40 years this spring as members of that gym. So to bring it back to your world for a second, one of the questions I ask my members all the time: do you want to be the hot shishi restaurant, or do you want to be the neighborhood diner on the corner? For a 10-year period, which restaurant do you think made more money over a 10-year period? Now, within a 2 or 3-year period, that hot restaurant definitely outperformed the neighborhood restaurant selling eggs and burgers. But if you're hot today, you're not hot in 3 years. But that neighborhood restaurant diner is still selling eggs and burgers and salads every day for 10 years. So I'm not saying there isn't a role for the hot shishi restaurant, right? But from a business standpoint, I think the objective for small business owners is sustainability. Sustainability means doing those things that are most likely going to result in a high lifetime value, right? Which means you have to deliver impact for them to stay for a long period of time.
So, all right. I keep coming back to like learning and development systems on this because in studios, are we really talking about skill building or are we talking about creating consistency at scale? Like, how do you think about the
Consistency.
trade off between
It's consistency, right? Why do you the one difference between a fitness studio and a restaurant is a restaurant, I mean, from my from my perspective, I've never worked at a restaurant, so you can correct me. I know there's a chef and then all the sous chefs, but there is a chef and there's a menu and it doesn't change day to day. A fitness studio has multiple instructors and people fall in love with the instructor. So your experience can vary by the instructor. Now, if you're the studio owner, your challenge is that your different instructors need to deliver not the same experience, but a similar high quality experience, right? It would be like if you had a rotating group of chefs. If Monday was Mexican and Tuesday was Thai and Wednesday was Filipino and Thursday was something, right? So every day I come in, I'm coming in Monday because I know I want whatever the Monday menu. That's what fitness is. I choose leg day, back day, arm day, ab day, whatever. But it's systems that ensure the consistency of the entire experience. And the experience isn't limited to when I'm actually in the class. The experience includes my check-in, before check-in, my booking. Do I have a simple process to book my class? My check-in process, the electronic communications from the business telling me what to bring. Do they have water? Do I need to bring water? Do they have towels? Do I need to bring my own towels? that communications. And then there's the class. Is the class amazing? Do I like the instructor? Does she call my name? Do I like the music? Do I like the people in there? After class, does everyone high five each other? Or does everyone put on the headphones and walk out and go their all separate ways? And then after class, back to the community. Well, is there a front desk? Are they telling me, great to see you. You can book your next class now. Am I getting a communication electronically after class? All of that defines the experience. And you have to deliver that consistently. And that is hard to do. Because we're dealing with people, right? We're dealing with humans. We're not dealing with robots. Even in this AI world, we're still dealing with people. People have bad days. And that's the challenge of getting everyone to, and I guess every team is like an orchestra or a chorus, trying to get them to sing, in harmony every single day. And people have good days and bad days. So that is a challenge to these systems.
You know, I'm sort of like mulling over what you said because you're talking about how, consistency has to cover the full customer journey, booking, check-in, communication, the class itself, the instructor. And it makes me think that like the hard part is not setting the standard, it's building the system that helps people hit the standard even on an off day. And I keep coming back to the idea that consistency is really a management problem as much as a training problem, because someone has to notice drift before the member does.
1,000%. And that's also why I said, to me, it starts with recruiting and onboarding. Because the recruiting is where you have the opportunity, the first opportunity to assess whether this person has the willingness, desire, and aptitude to run the play, right? You can't train someone to do something that they don't have the aptitude in. You could hire me, and then you'd be frustrated with me, and I'll help. I will have wasted your time. So I just think the recruiting process is underappreciated in this process, because the systems you're talking about, the training, you're training an actual human who has to have the ability to run the play.
Is that where most studios you think actually break first in the kind of recruiting space, or is it later
I
down?
think of, well, are we talking, we have to separate instructor from front desk, right? Instructor is a very unique skill, right? And so there are a bunch of other challenges that impact instructors. But for the front desk or your management team, I don't think there's enough appreciation of how important the recruiting people just think hiring, but I'm very specifically saying recruiting, hiring, onboarding. Like those three things happen before they start working with you, right? What is your onboarding process? And now they've onboarded, now they're on your team, and you're going to start to hold them accountable. So yes, management needs to identify when drift starts to happen, but before there can be drift, how about we assess whether the new hire has fully mastered what has completed the training properly and understands our SOPs, right? You have to do that. So that's the onboarding process. Okay, now they've been with me for 2 or 3 months, maybe even 6 months. Then the question is, first of all, the world is shifting so rapidly. What's my ongoing training process, right? Am I doing role play? Am I doing live action role play, which is to me very different? I just saw something this morning about a new company that's doing performance coaching for senior teams, treating them like athletes, not like just, it's just a recognition that a lot of companies expect their team to do their job without constantly training them on doing their job. I'm not saying that well. Let me say it this way. I'm fairly certain that Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Ed Sheeran still practice their poles, still run up and down all the scaling, that John Legend still practices piano. I think there's a lack of understanding among shift workers that they have to continue practicing, developing their skill. And that's where there's a combination of, is the employer, does the employer have a system for that type of ongoing training? And then what platform, what tools, what resources is the employer using? But it starts with the employer recognizing that we need to have an ongoing training system for our team, just like elite athletes,
Sure.
elite
Well,
athletes and high performers.
and that I love what you're talking about with sort of like the live action piece as well, because, that feels useful because it tests behavior and it's not just knowledge, right? We talk about that a lot at Opus. And a team member can understand a standard operating procedure on paper, but they can still freeze in a real moment with, a late member, a bad class experience, a tough sales conversation, what have you. And I think the value is that it shows whether someone can stay calm, use good judgment, and deliver the brand standard when the situation is messy, not when it's ideal. That's why that sort of practice is important, because the world is changing around us and we
In
have to
real
figure
time.
out how to
In
react.
real time. Yep.
Yeah.
LARP, LARP, live action role play. One of my
Yeah.
favorite tools. Look, there's no substitute.
Yeah. So, last question before we get into our lightning round, Julian. BFS has been part of the Opus ecosystem since 2021. What are you seeing across your member network? So you talked about you and your view, but I do want to hear, like, what are you seeing across the industry in terms of how seriously studios are taking the training conversation? Front desk staff, everybody. How of the moment is training when it comes
Not
to this?
not as much as it should be. Um, there's a disconnect still between I have a problem and I know what the solution to the problem is. Right? I mentioned earlier when we summarized the recurring themes from all my conversations last year. And by the way, all my conversations this year are consistent with those themes. So basically, for the last 12 months, the themes have been founder dependency, some aspect of people ops, the whole hiring journey, and systems. Like, those are the three topics that are occurring. So they recognize that there's a people ops issue. They don't always know the source of that issue. And so training isn't top of mind to them as a solution to their issue. It needs to be presented to them.
Mm.
Right? I'll give you an example. We have a member whose COO and general manager, two separate people, quit abruptly a couple of months ago. And obviously we talked about, how to address her immediate emergency. But after we did that, I pulled back and said, okay, so what did we learn from this experience? Right? No one should, if someone quits abruptly and it's not for like a personal health emergency, that's a serious red flag that you don't have a relationship with your COO where she would A, tell you in advance if something's wrong, B, give you a couple of weeks notice that I'm leaving, just to say today's my last day. That's a problem. Okay. And so this member recognized the problem, but then we had to work backwards to talk about, to unpack what the source of that problem was and what she could have done differently. And then you get to the role of training as part of the solutions of things you could have done differently. So I think there's still a lack of awareness at scale of the fundamental role of training, even though they'll say people ops is an issue, they haven't yet connected the dots between people ops and training.
Mm.
And just to give you another example before we wrap up, we asked two questions in our state of the industry. We asked what their number one objective is, and we asked what their top three challenges are. The top three challenges for the last 3 years have all been people related. So what do you think the number one objective should be? It's never people. And so I've asked them about it, called them out. How can you tell me that people is your number one challenge, but when I ask you your number one objective, you never say to build a high performing team? Like there's a disconnect between the thing that's causing them pain and what they think they need to do to build a sustainable business because they haven't fully embraced Richard Branson's quote, which is, you take care of your team takes care of your business. The people who select challenge people as a challenge, but grow my business as an objective, those people are failing to understand that the people will grow their business. They are putting them in separate buckets. And that's why they're spinning their wheels.
Well, and I keep wondering if the real gap then is that studios don't, it's not that they don't value training, but that they don't have a simple way to connect training to revenue, retention, or just fewer people issues, you know?
I think that's an excellent point
Mm.
because they're thinking in terms of revenue, AUV, top line revenue, and net income. They're not realizing that the way to get to those three is with people. The way to get the right people is everything that you and I talked about, the entire hiring journey. So it's not rocket science. People they're distracted.
Well, and you said it yourself, like we're in early innings in the industry, so it will come, and you know, BFS is helping shape that conversation. So,
As it always.
well, Julian, this has been great as always. I'm going to end with our lightning round. I'm going to ask you some questions. Try to answer as quickly as you can, 1 to 2 words. No
Yes.
need,
No.
no need for justification. Leave everyone in pure mystery. First question: what was your first job?
Caddy, golf course,
Mm.
age 13.
What is a fitness industry trend that you're completely over?
I'm over $10 memberships. Doesn't work. It's a whole nother conversation.
Opposite question: what's a fitness industry trend that you're really excited about?
Human optimization, integration of fitness, wellness, technology, healthcare, beauty. It's all one thing. It's one body. How we look good and feel good all work together.
What was the last book you read or podcast you listened to?
Your podcast, prepare for this one.
Good answer.
And I'm rereading 25th anniversary edition of John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership.
Hmm.
Highly recommend it to everyone listening to this. Survival.
We will post it in the comments. What is the best fitness class that you've taken in the last, 6 months?
Best fitness class, a hit class at the Harlow Method.
What are you going back to basics on personally right now?
AI,
If you
specifically Claude Code, Claude Core.
sure, yeah. If you could give your 25-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, the first answer, uh, it's not the one that you want, so I'll give you the second answer.
I'll take whatever.
I'll give you the first answer over Jerry's. Life goes by very fast, right? 25-year-old me, that's seemingly a long time ago, feels like yesterday. So the advice would be take nothing for granted. Life goes by very, very fast.
And last question, Julian, what is a business outside of fitness that really inspires you right now?
That inspires me. I used to say the Ritz Carlton
Interesting.
until I had a subcar experience and I was under recently. And it just goes back to reinforce this entire conversation. The gap between brand and delivery of values is huge, even at that level where you would think, well, they have all the resources, they could figure it out, but this one location didn't. So I got some extra points out of it.
Hmm. Julian, thank you so much for your time today. This was awesome. Really appreciate you as always, and looking forward to the next conversation.
Appreciate the opportunity to bring our credible conversations out into the public. So thanks for the opportunity, Rachel.
Yeah, of course.